not here. I'm so sorry, but at least we got some tents. There's still a few more seats. We're going to go ahead and begin because we want to do this and get you back out of the heat as quickly as we can. I know I've seen several mayors here. I saw Mayor Lockhart from Shoals. I saw Mayor Burroughs from Lexington. I saw Mayor Hurston from Rogersville. And I got a couple more that I need to introduce soon. I'm delighted you're here today. This is certainly a day come true for me. It's taken a long time to get here, but I'm certainly glad. I'll just apologize now. There are going to be a lot of people that we don't mention today because the music industry in this community is ongoing. Many of us have lived here for many years, and the music's been going on even all around us. So all of us work together, and we're so excited to be here today. It's an honor to stand before you today on this momentous occasion. This project began in 2009, and we're thrilled to see it come to completion today. The Singing River sculptures are a series of monumental scale structures throughout the Shoals honoring the area's long-standing music heritage as well as a strong history in the aluminum industry. Florence has been planning and preparing for our own installation in the series for many years. And it's my privilege today to offer this sculpture as a tribute of honor to our past local musical heroes as well as to those now and in the future. I know I'm not the only one proud to be here today. Our City Council is equally excited to see this project to completion. I'm going to recognize our council members. We have Council President Katrina Simmons from District 1, Bill Griffin from District 3, Michelle Eubanks from District 4, Blake Edwards from District 5, and Jimmy Oliver from District 6. And also on our front row to my left is former Council President Dick Jordan. As I said already, this project has spanned across the leadership of other mayors. And I'd like to offer them an opportunity now to share a few words. You know, I've had the good fortune of serving under 3 mayors. And all I can tell you, the only way to describe being a mayor is being a mayor. And I want to start out by asking, I'm going to announce all of them. We have Mayor Bobby Irons, Mayor Mickey Haddock, and Mayor Steve Holt. And I'd ask them to come and greet.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to welcome everyone here today, too, and offer my thanks and appreciation to everyone that's been involved in this project, bringing the Singing River sculpture to completion. I especially want to recognize David Anderson and the late Bill Matthews for their long-term commitment and dedication to the project. Thank you. They deserve it. They visited my office many times more than 10 years ago, promoting and selling this idea, and they never gave up, thank goodness. Now today, as a community, this Singing River sculpture is a confirmation of our musical heritage and the importance it brings to the Shoals area and the entire state of Alabama. It has brought great honor and exposure to our community and significant contributions to the economic success of our area. And many times we take that for granted, and we shouldn't. So we stand proud of this monument today. And again, to all the volunteers and contributors, we thank you.
Good evening. Mayor Irons and I are going to sound a whole lot alike. As U.S. President Teddy Roosevelt said, Nothing in the world is worth having or worth doing unless it means effort, pain, and difficulty. Well, this is so true with this project. A lot of effort, a lot of pain, and a lot of difficulty. And I too had the pleasure of working with David Anderson and Bill Matthews. They were in my office, seemed like every day. They were constant in their efforts. They never wavered from their commitment. And we stand here today because of them and many others that have the same commitment and are willing to put forth the effort to make this unveiling special. As your efforts compound, you will suddenly find yourself heading towards a rosier future. The future is now, and I say thank you to all involved. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to congratulate the current mayor and council for seeing another step in this dream come to fruition. As Bobby and Mickey have already said, it's been a long time coming, and I also too had the chance to work with, or the privilege actually, to work with Dave Anderson, Bill Matthews, and Sandra Vetters for many, many years. And I thank you for your perseverance, and I know that you're proud to see another step taking place in the legacy of these musicians that are being unveiled here in the Shoals. Mayor, I want to mention somebody that's kind of a unknown, unsung partner in all this, and that's the state of Alabama and the Alabama Department of Transportation that work with our city staff so cooperatively to make this site come to fruition. And we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that, and they were very gracious and very cooperative. This is the old State Trooper's office site right here. So to make that happen, we want to make sure and thank them for what they've done, and to thank everyone for being here today. But this is an absolutely beautiful sculpture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, mayors. I want to take this time. We're gonna single out some of the honorees honored today, but I'm delighted that we have the opportunity to have two individuals with us today. Dr. Carlos Handy is W.C. Handy's grandson, and our own Senator Bobby Denton here, and I couldn't be more pleased to be able to call him my friend. Now at this time, I'm going to ask Billy Warren to come forward. Billy is our city historian, and I asked him to tell you a little bit about this place. It's noted for a number of things. I want him to share that this is a special place for a special sculpture. Billy Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. But I'm so upset that you only gave me an hour to speak. I will contain it, though, even though he was generous. Talking about the space where you are now sitting or standing, for hundreds of years, perhaps even thousands of years, before Florence's founding in 1818, the Native Americans who lived here had exactly what they needed. They had this beautiful river as a food source and as a place of travel. They have where we're standing and sitting as a wilderness with plenty of wild game and plenty of wild food. So it was an ideal setting for them. So fast forward to 1818, and our town was founded. A planned town on the frontier is remarkable within itself, but I will try to contain myself and not get too carried away. In 1821, just 3 years later, our town was visited by a woman by the name of Anne Royale. She traveled alone as a journalist on the frontier. Some people call her brave, I call her foolhardy, but anyhow, she walked, she rode in boats, she rode on horseback, but she visited frontier towns, and Florence was one of them. In her letter in 1821, she described warehouses all along the bank of the river here. Because as you know, our river was not navigable year-round until Wilson Dam was finished in 1925. So there were many times during the year that the goods being shipped here by boat couldn't even go any further, so there were warehouses. The goods were offloaded, put into the warehouses, and then taken to their destination. So kind of visualize that, following the Native Americans and their being here. So to this property specifically, I have to give a nod to the Honorable John McKinley. He was Alabama's first Justice of the Supreme Court. He lived here in Florence at the time. His house was right over there. Where the Hampton Inn is, it's right over on the back side of the Hampton Inn property. Well, Anne Royale again, when she was here, she described this impressive home of John McKinley and his family. In fact, she called it a mansion. But those of us who read her letters, she tended to be a little overblown in her descriptions. What she did say, and I love this, she visited Huntsville as well, but she said about the ladies of Florence that the ladies in Florence were much better looking than the women in Huntsville. And guess what? That's still true today, right? Anyway, back to John McKinley. He lived over there, his family, but he had a cow barn. They had cattle still, of course, in those early days, right here where we're standing and sitting. He had a cow barn right at what would be now the corner of Bluff Street and Court Street. And all of this ground around it was labeled public ground, and it had a public spring that was right up on that corner. If you follow the nod of my head, I don't want my paper to blow away, okay? But then that same cow barn was sold a couple of times, and a fellow by the name of John Rapier, who was an African American, he was a later owner of that cow barn, and he sold it to the trustees of the Methodist Church, our downtown Methodist Church, in 1857, so it would be a meeting house for the local African American population. I'm talking about a church house. It was first simply known as, quote, the African Church, unquote. By 1859, just 2 years later, the church was known as Church Springs Methodist Episcopal Church. And here's a wonderful thing to tell you. In 1866, just a few years later, the very first school for African American children in Florence opened in that church, that former cow barn. It was under the auspices of the Pittsburgh Freedmen's Aid Association, and it was still a church on Sundays, but a school during the week. By 1878, it appears that Church Springs Methodist Church, officially affiliated with the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the AME, and after purchasing a factory building on the corner of what is now West Alabama Street and Court, a corner of the courthouse parking lot, there was a factory there known as the Fant, F-A-N-T, Fant factory, and they began to meet in that factory building. But they replaced it with another building in 1895, and it continued to develop until today. It is known as the Greater St. Paul AME Church and is on Cherokee Street. So, a brief history of all of that in a nutshell, and I conclude with this. With its very storied past, this property where you're standing and sitting will continue that historical narrative that I've summed up for you. It will continue that historical narrative by highlighting Florence's world-famous music history that began, and you know it and I know it, began as the Singing River. Thank you.
To tell you briefly about Bill Matthews, our partner that we miss very much. we're honoring him today. We're not only dedicating this sculpture and this experience today to him and all his work, but this plaque to my left, when you're walking around the sculpture, you will see our tribute to him there as well. But I wanted you to know how it began briefly. Bill, this is his idea, and David and I are so proud to tell you that. But it happened this way. David was a walker. Now that means a serious walker, because he trained here and then walked in countries around the world. He'd been to Ireland once before, but on one other trip to Ireland, he came across a checkpoint that was a place where people from the north and south of Ireland that were in conflict would be able to check through and visit their relatives. But he noted the sorrow of that the first trip. But the second trip that he went through, it was no longer there. What was there became Bill's inspiration for this sculpture. There was a band that was sitting in the middle of this large courtyard, and there were musicians there. There were guitars and flutes and percussion and banjo, everything you could think of that would make some music or make a percussion sound. And around him were people, couples that were dancing, children that were dancing and having a great time. And he saw that, and previous to him going over there and seeing it, he and David had been looking for, knowing that they wanted 4 sculptures, one in each city, that they would find a symbol that would draw the community together. Well, this was it. This was the inspiration for Bill. He couldn't wait to get home and immediately call David, and they began to share what it might look like. And in the meantime, they did some research, as Billy Warren alluded to, about the Tennessee River here, and over all of our history, we know that the Native Americans here referred to the river as the Singing River. But they heard a voice out of that river, a song, as it went over the shoals and in different times of the seasons. So all of a sudden, it became clear to David and Bill that this river is our link. It links all our cities. It links us together. And so they came up with the Singing River sculpture. And we love that, and I think that everyone has expressed that to us. But anyway, we learned from that history, and that it was a perfect introduction to what they wanted to do. There were 2 projects to finish, and Muscle Shoals got their project, and Florence gathered a steering committee that got together to evaluate what they wanted and to select a sculpture for this Florence Singing River. So we've only used sculptors that are from Alabama, and we are honoring that heritage too, and in a big way today, I can tell you. Bill always referred to these sculptures as humongous. Every time you were in a conversation with him, he'd say, "Oh, it's got to be humongous. People have to notice it." When I was in Ireland, those things were 20 feet tall. Anyway, he had his heart set on this, and we have it today. And I'm going to introduce now David Anderson, and he will tell you some other things. Thank you.
Well, it's my privilege to thank some people who helped us with this project. We want to thank all 4 mayors for putting up with us. Notice all of them said they came by many times. Okay. The mayor said we came by their offices many times. Surely they didn't get offended by that. I don't know. But they were all very cooperative. They were all in favor of it as soon as they heard what the project would be. They were in favor of it, and they helped us everywhere they could. I want to digress just for a minute and tell you, there are people in this audience, at least 3 that I know of, that were here when all this music started at the Joyner bus station and at the city drugstore. Bobby Denton was here. David Briggs is here. And Spooner Olin is here. And there may be some more. But they were here from the beginning. that ended up. It's world famous. Talking about Bill and his hikes, he never came back that he didn't tell us, without him saying anything about the music. He would run into somebody in these foreign countries that said, "Oh, you're from where the Muscle Shoals sound came from." People here didn't know that, but they did. I'm going to go now and go ahead and thank some people who have helped us. Anybody that's done this kind of work knows that the people who are visible are certainly not the only people that worked on it. There's dozens, if not hundreds, of people behind the scenes. Otherwise, it would never get done. The city employees in Florence are top notch. We were impressed with their professionalism, and they were all, yeah, that's right. And the city is very fortunate to have them, and we were very fortunate to work with them. And I've got a list here, and this is not all of them, but these are the ones that we work with the most. Steve Eason, Dan Barger, Bill Batson, David Kuntz, Chase McCliff, Sandra Morgan, and Martha Murphy. Martha was here last night till 6:30 working on this project. And Phil Stevenson, and there are others. That's right. And additionally, not with the city, but with organizations around the Shoals, we'd like to say thank you to Nancy Gaunch, the Music Preservation Society, Mary Settle Kumi was at the Tennessee Valley Arts Center, and also at the Arts Center was Keith McMurtry. And Keith kept us straight as far as the funds coming in and going out, and that was a big job. Thank you. I'm about through. Another thank you goes out to Kevin Lamb and Lyndon Boyles, who helped us put together, or they put it together actually, the music that you've been hearing when you're approaching it, and you will be hearing as soon as the sculpture is unwrapped. And there was a couple of guys, Ted Metz at the University of Montevallo and Craig Winterspoon at the University of Alabama. Both of them are very accomplished and well-known sculptors. And they consulted with us, and they kept us kind of on track and helped us find the right sculptor to do this, and I think we did. And I think you will agree with that when you see it. And I want to say thank you to Eric Newby, who put this sculpture together, for his inspired design. I think he came up with a design that even the committee didn't know exactly what we wanted. We had an idea of what we wanted, and Eric fulfilled that. His workmanship was just fantastic. To start with, we had a very high quality group of people who helped us as far as the commissioning of this project. Our commissioning committee was, at that time, Andy Pedersen, who was on the city council at that time, Professor Chin, who was director of galleries and professor of art at UNA, Dr. Elliot Knight, who's director of the Alabama State Council on Arts, Selwyn Jones, one of our fine local musicians, and Libby Jordan, at that time director of arts and museums for the city. And ex officio members of that group was Mayor Steve O, Bill Matthews, Sandra Bettis, and myself. Now, Mayor, are we ready to unwrap this? Let's get on with it. We got just a little bit more. I know you're excited. I know we've got lots of people to thank. I know in particular, this sculpture was paid for with private dollars, and we got lots of people to thank for that. Our obligation as a city was to provide the location and the base. Before I move along, I want to be sure we recognize White Linden Collins, BH Craig Construction, Bethlehem Equipment. Bethlehem was out here putting the sculpture up, and you've never seen one put up. That was quite an observation. And I know David mentioned Chase McCluskey, who's an engineer in our engineering department, but this is his project. And he always got a big grin on his face when you ask him a question about it. I couldn't be more pleased with that. Now I'm going to read the honorees that were on the invitation. And if there's family members, if they're here or our family members here, I'd like you to stand. Well, obviously W.C. Handy's not here, but we got a grandson. Percy Sledge, Arthur Alexander, Gary Baker, Norbert Putnam, Barry Beckett, Jimmy Johnson, David Hood, Roger Hawkins, James Joyner, Tom Stafford, Rick Hall, Sam Phillips, Buddy Killen, Billy Sherrill, Kelso Hurston, Bobby Denton, Earl Green, Carl Montgomery, David Briggs, Donnie Fritz, Dan Penn, Spooner Oldham, Terry Thompson, Jerry Carrigan, Terry Woodford, Randy Poe, Walt Aldridge, Mark Narmore, Kevin Lamb, and Nancy Lee. The commemorative plaque concerns the musicians who began their careers in Florence, Alabama, and they changed the world with their music of the 20th century. They became world famous with a unique style. Their talents are undisputed, and their contribution to our lives in Florence and the Shoals is valued. Their music and hit recordings are part of the very fabric of our lives today. The music you have been hearing today and will hear at the unveiling is connected to the honorees listed on your invitation and the commemorative plaque. They have written, composed, accompanied, produced, published, and recorded it. The music is a listening experience of the various genres and approach to music these talented individuals have created and given to the world. And it doesn't end there. There's new music coming out of the Shoals, and a new generation shows their talents and creates their own Muscle Shoals sound. The legacy continues. Let's all give them another round of applause. Sandra's helping me remember here, but I also want to recognize Constellium and their employees for the aluminum, which was contributed to this project. We couldn't have done it without them.
Yes, Constellium is so valuable and cooperative. We appreciate them. All their employees were excited about this. I want to now, before Andy makes the last introduction, to introduce Bill Matthews' family. I know it's very hot, but if you would stand, please. This is Mason Matthews, Allison and Ben, his brother John Matthews, and sisters Sandra Bishop and Priscilla Smith. And this was Bill's home, and he was quite invested in this project, as was his family. Thank you so much.
I'm going to ask Eric Newby to step forward. Eric, you're in charge of disrobing this sculpture.